Okay, so for those who are here or watching the replay, welcome and thank you for joining us. This is my ever first trial, episode of an online show called SocialJam, wherein I interview the social media leaders all over the world. And I am privileged to have Manolo Almagro. He is the senior managing director. Whoa, Manolo, did you hear that? That's thunder.
Yeah, it is thunder. Wow, when you mention my name, it causes thunder. I don't know if that's a good thing.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Who is and please, correct me if I'm wrong, senior managing director of TPN retail over at Texas. Is it right?
Yeah, I'm in the Austin office.
Austin office. Okay, yep. And tonight or today, depends on wherever you are in the world when you're watching this or if you're here, he will be discussing about the, innovative examples of location-based marketing. So I'm excited about that because I love the future and everything, especially the virtual reality gear that I hope you're going to discuss tonight. Yeah.
Sure.
Awesome. So I will then, and I don't know if it's left or right, I'm not sure. But Manolo, maybe you could just introduce a little bit more about yourself. I know I just introduced you, but maybe something you can tell the rest who you are and why you're so awesome.
Well, thanks, Jam. I am the guy that leads the innovation and retail technology discipline within the agency. So I work for TPN, which is an Omnicom agency, and its focus is retail marketing, and shopper marketing. My specific role is really focused on the emerging technologies, understanding how people's behavior is changing because of the technologies that we have, and also finding new ways to engage using technology as its basis. So I work very closely with planners, so they give us the insights, and then we look at either mainstream trends and say, okay, how can we make things work better from a customer experience perspective? Or we look at new technology that's just coming out and say, let's put this into an actual test and learn environment so that we can help our brands and retailer clients understand how people will react to these things. So it's still early on, but it's helping them learn quickly because the way the environment is over here, it's fast moving right now.
Awesome. Thank you. And of course, in the other seat is Karen. Karen, maybe you'd like to introduce yourself before we give the floor to Manolo so he can give and discuss, some examples of location-based marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm kind of a drop-in here. My name is Kieran Snaith. I'm the Director of Business Development at WeLink. WeLink is a location-based social media monitoring company. What our clients are using our software for is to understand what's being said on social media at their locations. This is being applied to retail in the U.S. And all kinds of different Fortune 500 clients. So absolutely, Jam and I work very closely together. She's a user of WeLink software. So we've been working pretty closely together for the last 6 or so months. So excited to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Well, I will give the floor, or Manolo, go ahead. Give us, just wow us. Maybe as a start, you were talking about facial analytics to probably, personalized retail experiences. I mean, for those who are in the room, welcome, by the way, Herbie. And I think Jocelyn or Joe is actually from Unitech here in New Zealand. So thanks for joining. I can see her there. But yeah, let's start with facial analytics. What is it? Is that like new surgery or anything?
It is actually. So we work with a company. So Austin is kind of an evolving area for startups as well. It's kind of you have San Francisco, of course, and then you have New York and Chicago, and then Austin is, it's where South by Southwest is. So we find a lot of these startups that are experimenting or using new types of technology. So facial analytics really is a softer way to say facial recognition, because when you say facial recognition, it freaks everybody out, especially on the retail side, because they raise the privacy flag and say, hey, wait a minute, what are you doing? So we say facial analytics. And in this case, we work at a company called IQ. And so what they've done is they've developed a platform that leverages, it's called, sorry, it's still early. It's early in the morning here. It's uses Watson. Remember Watson? It was the IBM artificial intelligence brain, basically. Yeah, and they used it to play Jeopardy. So they made a really smart computer, and then they made it play Jeopardy. I don't really understand the whole thing, but literally, so what IBM has done is they created APIs and they put Watson in the cloud so that anyone with the license keys to use it can go in there and push information into it and then get information out of it. So what facial analytics is really looking at or determining gender, age, sentiment, can do emotional profiling as well, and it also can do things like personality assessment based on information that's fed into it. In this case, we use it for retail situations where we're trying to understand what's happening at the aisle. So a lot of the technology that we do is, interactive aisle platforms, touch screens, things like that. I'll have to see if I can make this show you what we. All right, this is my first time using Manicam, so let's see if it works.
Cross fingers.
Yeah.
I've never used it, so yeah, I have to start actually. Probably.
It's pretty cool when they had it working. Hold on. Where is it? Manicam.
And while we're waiting for Manolo to try out and see if he can share his screen, Jocelyn, since you're here, or Joe, if you don't mind me, I'm sure this is your first time. So if you have any questions, by the way, feel free to jump in as well. There's an open seat over there. If you're not the shy type, and join in the conversation. This is what I love about Blab, is it's really more engaging. It's not just a one-way street, so to speak. But if you would like to just ask a question as well over the chat, the way you type it is /Q and then the question. And then it should appear actually on the left. And then we'll ask Manolo to answer that, or maybe Karen can as well, or myself. Cool. How are we doing,
you guys,
Manolo?
I'm trying to show it. Do you guys see it? I can just see myself, so maybe it's not working.
Okay.
Oh, I'm really sorry. It's not. I can't show you what I could do is I can post it later. But basically, right now for Best Buy in Canada, we are doing a test for OtterBox. You guys familiar with OtterBox? They create those, iPhone cases and phone cases, things. They have LifeProof and OtterBox are their premier brands. So if you've ever bought a case for your phone, there's like a lot of questions you have for yourself. You say, okay, what kind do I like? What kind of lifestyle do I lead? Do I want something really, heavy duty, or do I want something that's, very thin and lightweight and things like that? So what we've done is we've put into Best Buy's a touchscreen, a 21-inch touchscreen with a camera, and the camera basically records who walks up to it and assesses if it's a male or a female. So we're basically just taking some basic audience measurement information, so we understand the demographic. And then we are then asking specific questions in a very simple 5-question profile that says, okay, who are you? What kind of, do you do these kind of sports, that kind of thing? And then using both the facial recognition as well as the sentiment analysis, and also taking the information, and we push back recommendations on the type of product they should have. But the first step for this platform is we have to collect information, because right now there's no way for them to know who's in the store. They usually just have a very simple analytics system that's just on the interactive side of things. So where it only tracks what you're touching, where you spend your time, basically, simple web analytics. So the dimension we're opening up is who's standing in front of the system, what they're doing, how they're reacting to it, and then we take that information and then we create new content behind it that will be triggered by these personal data streams that are happening inside the store. So if I had my camera working, I'd be showing you some of the interfaces that we have, and then also a back-end portion of it that can do things like it says age. It's basically making an assessment on the age and your gender, and then a lot of the details that we're asking, and then it's kind of quickly assessing the type of person you are. Now, the other piece that we're taking into account is, with mobile phones, they have they do this thing where they ping for Wi-Fi, right? When you walk into a store, sometimes you quickly go to the Wi-Fi and sign into it. But a lot of times, if you're not doing anything, it's just pinging to see if there's a Wi-Fi signal. The MAC address can be tracked for that. So we add another dimension of saying, okay, this specific phone is attached to this person standing in front of the kiosk. And then as they move around the store, we're tracking where they go to after they interact with the screen. And if they go to the register, we can say, okay, this person went to the kiosk, they got information, we gather that information, they move to the checkout, and then we track the final piece, which is the conversion, which is the point of sale transaction. So it gives us a very detailed view of what's happening in the store using a lot of the data that's gathered in that real-time experience.
Wow, that's awesome. Just a question, and I'm trying to imagine myself being that person in the store. And when you say you ask them questions, I mean, can you just elaborate a little bit about that? Because it's kind of unclear in my head.
Sure.
Yep. So
well,
you said
we're trying to do two different things. So one part is if you have if your Twitter feed is public, we say can put in your Twitter feed, and what it can do is it analyzes the last 200 posts that you have on Twitter and can make an assessment about your personality. So Watson's API has something like 28 or 32 different profiles built into it, and it's based on how you use what you say in your feed. So you can say this person is outgoing, aggressive, an introvert, things like that. So we take that as one way to get a personality assessment. And the other thing is we ask questions like, what do you like to do? What sports do you play? And things like that. And so those two things together are how we're kind of putting together an assessment of the personality. So we're trying it in an A/B test. So 1 week it's going to be just the questions on the kiosk. 1 week it's going to be if they have a social feed. So a lot of times people are reluctant to type in their social media information, right? They just say, okay. And then the other part is, okay, maybe they're not public with their Twitter feed and things like that. So it poses a challenge for us to do an assessment. So that's why the questions are there too. So we're kind of trying to see which one has better performance or people are more apt to doing and sharing.
Awesome. Karen, do you have any thoughts on, have you heard of facial recognition or analytics? Any thought? Yep.
You're right in my wheelhouse right now because, I've worked on a number of projects for WeLink, for Cisco. We sit on Cisco's CAR group, which is Connected Analytics for Retail. They do all of the things that you're talking about here. And what WeLink specializes in is you've got all this sensor data, right? You're talking about this facial recognition stuff. You're talking about, tracking phones as they ping off of the access points. And so you can kind of map out where people are visiting through the store, all of that great stuff. My question is, when are you pairing that with social? Besides that social sign-in, where you're encouraging them, hey, get access to the Wi-Fi, sign in with Twitter or Facebook, how can you pair Mac ID, Jam's Mac ID with who they are?
We can't. I can only say it's this person of this gender and age, right? That's the thing. We haven't got that. I think that's the holy grail, but it's also an area that from a privacy perspective, some people don't want us to get into. I think it's great as a retailer and marketer. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what you want. But sometimes they don't want to cross that threshold of tying it to a person. But to your point, if we do things like tie it to their app that is part of their loyalty program, then you actually have the profile right there.
Right.
But while you were talking, I was looking at your website, and I'm very interested in what you guys do, because we haven't. That's the one piece we aren't tracking is when you're in the store, what the social feeds are what's being said. So it seems like the missing piece for what we're trying to pull together.
Right, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, there you go. And that's why I love Blab, by the way, because you just it's just instant networking and stuff. So cool. All right. So anything else? Can you give us another probably real life example, like just to paint a picture for those who will be watching the replay, of course, paint a picture of how facial analytics and this technology would be beneficial for stores. I mean, apart from the obvious, I mean, I'm just making, lack of a better words, I'm trying to simplify it for those that might be thinking, okay, this is kind of too techie for me. But simplify it as like for a I don't know, name a brand that would probably be using this, and I'm a consumer. How does that benefit me as a consumer? And because it's kind of obvious, it's beneficial for a business, but for a consumer,
sure.
Key examples, yeah.
Well, let's say if you're a bike manufacturer, right? Because I'm making it easy on me. A bike manufacturer is a gender-based product. There's girls' bikes and boys' bikes. They're totally different designs. Why are they different? I don't really know, but they're totally different designs. So the first and easiest way to say is if you walk up to this kiosk, it will quickly assess you're a female of this age and start showing you bike models only for females, or vice versa. If you're a male, it will do that too. So that in itself is the kind of real-time personalization that you get right away. And then the secondary component would be, okay, why don't you, tell us more about yourself would be the next question. And then you would say, would you like to share your Twitter feed with us? So you type just the Twitter feed in, and if it's public, it'll do a quick analysis of how you say and speak and what you say, and say, okay, you are an aggressive person. I mean, it's not going to say you're an aggressive person, but it's going to make that assessment of how you speak and maybe all of the things that, if you talk about sports and things like that, it can quickly say, well, you could be more of a mountain biking person versus the touring bike type of person, right? So again, the customization is happening. And then here's another piece is it's looking at my face and I'm like making this kind of face. Like I'm questioning or I'm not understanding something, and people kind of do this thing like, I'm not sure. It can take that information and simplify what's being shown on the screen because it's thinking that, oh, maybe this is too complex of a message. We have to bring it back and personalize it even more. So that's kind of the real-time effect of the customization that we're looking to try to do.
Yep.
Now, I think the challenge is really the content behind it is the piece, right? It can do all of these things and see and tell you who you are, but then you have to have content to back you up, because that just increases the number of personalization things that you have to have at the ready for it to show.
Right. And when you say show, and again, I'm trying to simplify it for those, are you talking about them being in store and they have an app, or what are they looking at with all of these personalization and stuff? Is it, obviously it's mobile?
Yeah, literally it's a HTML5 page, right? It's a website, but it's designed for finger navigation. So it's a touch screen and things like that. So what it'll do is it'll recompile the page or redesign the page based on who's looking at it in real time, and then pull information about what it thinks is relevant to the person that's interacting with the screen at that point.
Exactly. And and I'm going to move on to the next kind of topic. And you mentioned about beacons, right? Is it similar? How different is it? What is it exactly? I've heard of it, but hey, I'm here to listen. So, yeah.
So I think beacons have been around for the past couple of years. And I think what I've seen from a retail deployment perspective is that it's really being used as a media play versus a real engagement platform, right? I think the easiest way for companies like InMarket, which is one of the larger networks out there, they've deployed a bunch of these beacons in a bunch of retailers to get their money back and to recoup money and generate revenue is, let's just make it so that when you walk into a store, we can push you an ad or a coupon or something, which isn't necessarily the nicest experience. I mean, you want a little bit more personalization behind that. And, you know, if you come to the store more than once or twice a week, what are you going to get the same type of message every time? So there's a lot of challenges about beacons today. And if you notice that it was really hot for a while, then people started talking about it, and then no one started saying anything about it. Like, so I think there's this area now where they're really seeing how beacons work at scale. What we've been using beacons for is really just, again, for in-store analytics. So what's happening in store, how people are moving around in store. There's a company that we work with called Best Fit Mobile. I'll just put the link out there. Hold on one second. So you guys can look at what I'm talking about. So what they've done is created a full platform that ties into what happens on the web. So if you log into their website or a website of a retailer or an e-com site that's using their platform, it will collect the information and what your activity was when you're on the website. And then when you come into the store, it provides the sales associate with the information of what you were doing so they can kind of pick up where you left off on the website. And then it also will track where you're spending your time inside the store, which is how the beacons are being used versus like just pushing you messages like, here's your coupon because we saw that you were looking at eyeglasses. It will give more information to the sales associates so they can kind of talk to you as if they know what you're, in a more thoughtful way versus just kind of, grasping at, oh, here's the category you're looking at. Here's some more of their interests. So again, it's personalizing the experience, but also informing the person that's supposed to help you in the store to a point where they have more information, so you don't necessarily have to start over and explain what you're trying to do in the store or what you're trying to get. So what we like to look at the beacon standpoint is really being more of a engagement tool than just a way to a media platform for people inside the store. And it also, again, does the things like heat maps about how people are spending their time in the store. So the brands and the retailers can understand where people spend their time and then reconfigure the store or learn about how the store could become better based on the historical information they're collecting. And that's one
awesome.
way. Yeah.
Okay. I will just spin it a little bit just so that Karen doesn't fall asleep there, because I know it's pretty late.
I've got to jump in like 5 minutes, so
okay.
I'll be listening to the recording, but I want to hear what you have to say.
Yep. No, I was just wondering. Now we have Karen from WeLink, which is obviously when it comes, you mentioned Manolo earlier about engagement and stuff. And what I love about their software is there is a way, when we grab or when it grabs the data or the social media posts around that certain area, when you geofence it and stuff, and you can eventually engage with them, so there is that real time alerts. You've got more information before you can engage with someone. And it could be, again, a person in the store saying, I was just wanted to buy shoes or whatever it is. I hope they have the same size as I have. I mean, all these things. I mean, people love just putting stuff out on social media. And then now, if you were to then have both technologies together, I was just wondering what you guys think. I mean, I don't know. I'm still thinking about it right now, but how do you think is that actually going to be like in terms of the consumer experience? I'm actually going to be blown away because, okay, so which data am I going to use in order to engage with that person? I guess that's where I'm coming from.
So are you talking about combining beacons with location-based social media monitoring?
Yeah. I was just wondering if there's a way, or I'm just curious. Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's absolutely a way. We've looked at doing it before, but and this is my opinion. Somebody may disagree, but like I don't believe that beacons can bring anything to location-based social media monitoring because there's friction with beacons. It's opt-in, right? Like what is the app of choice? Is it an in-store app? People aren't doing that, but everybody's opted into social. People are going into store. It's really easy for them to post a tweet, broadcast their thoughts. It's difficult to see a beacon sign, download an app, check in so that marketers can just push you, as many push notifications and jam it down your throat. The social aspect of things, it's organic, right? You're in there, you're just doing what you love to do and post on social. And then you've got a social media specialist right there in real time engaging, So that's kind of my play. We worked with a company that does beacons, and their biggest struggle was like there's friction. Nobody's opting into this thing. They've got the signs in store, but nobody's opting in. So what do? They come to us and they say, WeLink, we want to purchase your software, integrated in through our API, so you can help us overcome this hurdle of people not opting in, because we're just going to make our solution all social engagement and rewards.
Yeah, I also think that the way people ask for reviews or product information, like has anyone ever used this before, things like that. That's a simple behavior to capitalize on, because that's what people do. Is like they tap in and say, "Hey, I'm looking at this thing," or you shoot a picture up and you say, "What do you think of this?" And social is a very natural approach to that. So I totally agree. I think I'm with you on the beacon side. I think what's happened is a lot of the retailers bought into it because they thought that was going to be the next thing. I mean, that's how it was touted the past 2 years. But most of the projects are there that are really just, it's almost like a text message being pushed to you when you come in and say, okay, hey, I know it's you. If you have the app open, here's some other stuff. But I totally agree. I think it's a quality of engagement right now that's missing with the beacon stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing too, beacons, the aspect that we thought it would bring to the table is like, oh, well, maybe we'll gain access to a little bit more location information. Like if a user doesn't have their location services on and they're on Twitter, maybe if they use that beacon, now we can determine what beacon number this was, where's the beacon within the store. Now we have a way to understand where they are, right? But then we started doing this with Cisco and just integrating WeLink's algorithms onto their AP. So we're doing the near field communication and figuring out where they are in relation to the APs rather than the beacons now. So, just kind of how it's all going.
Yep, absolutely.
But anyways, guys, I do have to jump. It's 11:30 here and I'm trying to finish up things before I go to bed. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And we should talk offline sometime.
All right, Karen, I'll be in touch.
Excellent.
Cool. Thanks, Karen. Awesome. So, Jocelyn, if you're still there, yes, you are still there. If you have any questions and if you want to experience what Blab's all about, you can grab a seat. There's an open seat over there. Just click on, I believe they changed it. It was, I think it's call in right now. Just click on it. And if you do have a webcam, we'd love to see your awesome, beautiful face. Or if you're shy, then just chat with us. So yeah, okay. So let's move on to the virtual reality thing, because that's kind of interesting.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been pretty hot, with Oculus, Facebook buying Oculus Rift and all the attention. I think as an agency, it's still one of those areas where it's the sexy thing to show the client, but then the practical application still becomes, all right, at retail, if you've ever seen any of the demos, it's like they have a setup of 6 or 7 chairs and then they give people these goggles to put on their head, right? That's kind of not a real practical experience for someone. It's not a natural thing. And people are like, okay, I'll try it one time. It's for the novelty of it. What we have done is we're using it more on the standpoint of research for behavior. So because we work in retail, we do things like design stores and design full experiences. The challenge is always to understand what happens when you put a person in the store. Now, usually what we have to do is build a physical store. We build a prototype store, which is expensive and takes a long time. And then you do a focus group and you walk them through it and then you ask them the questions. So we use Oculus Rift. We also have experimented with Google Cardboard as well as a way to create the store simulations for the prototype stores, so the innovation stores, before they're even built, and put people in the stores and let them navigate around, right? So there's two ways we do this. Let's call it the old school way, was you would create a 3D simulation that's like a fly-through, but that's more of a video that you control the person's point of view. With virtual reality, they actually can roam around the store as if they were looking at it, and they can look at the shelf, they get really close, and then they can lift things up, not necessarily in a physical way, but they have the ability to pick up product off the shelf. What we do is we track the behavior. We ask people, we basically do a virtual reality focus group, and then we take the information and then reconfigure the store, which we can do pretty quickly, within minutes, and say, okay, what about this? So it takes it to another more efficient way to understand how people are going to react with the store in a more cost-effective manner. And also from the physical perspective, because it's digital, we can quickly make those changes. Then the next level is you have an opportunity to, there are people that are, it's their job to make sure that the compliance is in place. Like, okay, the POP is set up the right way, or the whatever is being, the shelves are organized in the right way. So there's a lot of levels of compliance that have to happen. So we take the Oculus Rift experience and then we kind of take it out of the goggles and make it into a mobile experience. So it's still virtual reality, or augmented reality, we'll call it, where they can use a tool with their mobile devices and make sure that things are done the right way. They can reference it using it as a way to say, okay, I'm looking at the shelf through my phone, or in a virtual experience and saying, I'm comparing what I see in the store to what I have in my hand as a reference. So those are really I think the clients have been very quick to adapt those things, because it brings it to another level, and it also is a very efficient and cost-effective way for doing store tests, so to speak.
Yep. So are you saying that this is being used, just for gathering data, and as you said, you mentioned it was focus groups. Has it been used already in stores? It's kind of weird though, because I know I have this.
Exactly. Well, I think there's I kind of remember, I don't remember who it was, but that one of it's a fashion store recently came out with an experience, but it's still, you got to go in and you sit down in a chair and put this goggles on, which it's okay. It's interesting, but I think that's kind of not necessarily a really scalable approach. It's the novelty of it. But I do think that as things progress and as the technology becomes better and cheaper, like even from the standpoint of Oculus, their price point is going to be under $300 for the set of goggles. Then there's Samsung that has their Samsung Gear virtual reality attachment, which basically you can take your phone or your Note 4 and pop it into the goggles, and it gives you a very rich experience. So I think the consumer level engagement, or the consumer level of gear that you'll need to have virtual reality, is going to be there and in there, very accessible, even from the price point that's going to come out. So then it sets up an opportunity where maybe you would shop from home wearing these glasses in a virtual reality store, because it's kind of like the days when the first e-com websites came out and people were like, wow, this is pretty convenient. So I don't have to leave the house, and then I have everything delivered to me. I think more from a gaming perspective, that's where the quick adoption is going to come into play. And then I think the retailers are going to try to, shoehorn their way into saying, okay, well, now I'm going to create a virtual Best Buy where people can just log in and come in. But I think that it's going to take a lot of research to figure out if people are really going to do that.
And I guess it's also when it comes to adopting, this technology. I mean, I would think the new generation, I said the millennials, whatever, they would definitely be okay with this for sure. Once they know that the technology exists, and this is probably the next wave that people are really going to shop. They're just going to, it's just going to switch on. They're just so switched on. They're all, these are the guys that you were born with digital devices and stuff, right? So this just makes sense to them. It's like, yeah, I mean, why do I have to go to a brick and mortar store? And they feel comfortable. I guess that's the point. Maybe my age, I would still want to go to a store and stuff. Oh, cool. Awesome. But it's just the comfort level for us being used, you know what I mean? Used to having something in front of us that's tangible, you can hold. And then now you've got this virtual reality to shop. It's kind of weird. It doesn't feel right. I mean, that's at least, Jocelyn was asking, but Google Glass wasn't successful. Any thoughts about that, Manolo?
Yeah, actually, I have to say I was one of the people that had Google Glass. I still have it. It's in my closet now.
It's just in your closet.
Yeah. Well, I think Google Glass, there's two things that were happening. I mean, it's a good question to talk about. My experience with Google Glass was it was too weird. It was just, you had a camera on your head and early experiences. I mean, they literally called us glass holes when we wore those things. And it had a very visceral impact on some people. Were like, hey, that's cool. Can I try it? And then some people were like, stop filming me. I know you're looking at me and videoing me, right? Because the camera is on that thing. So, but from a VR perspective, it's a little different because VR is a fully enclosed experience. You're actually creating a simulated world inside that doesn't necessarily bring the physical component into play. And I think, what that experience is bringing into play is if you there's a good brand to use that's using it right now is Marriott. So Marriott has VR experiences that you can download, which you can download to your Oculus Rift, or if you have a Samsung phone, you can download them off the App Store, and it'll take you to destinations that you've never visited before. It's like you can go to China, and you would basically you can walk down a street in China and feel like you're really there. To me, that's a very valuable experience that's different. Now, Google Glass didn't do that. Google Glass was really more augmented reality that projected digital experiences into your physical world. But I also think that it came with a huge stigma of it was elitist. They tried to make it a fashion statement. And it also, people who did get them were not very nice, honestly. So yeah. I think that had a lot to do with it. But, I also saw that they're taking the technology that's behind Google Glass and creating more of an augmented reality game, a lot like what Microsoft's doing with their HoloLens. So I think it's going to come back, but in a different iteration very soon.
It's interesting when you mentioned about virtual reality and going to China and travel destinations. We do have Kevin, who just entered the room, and he is just looking at his profile. He's a digital nomad on podcast diary of my ongoing travels. So it would be interesting to hear what he thinks. Yes, and Jocelyn said, yep, I understand, two different purposes. Welcome, Kevin, by the way. We are in the middle of actually discussing about virtual reality and Oculus Rift. It's to change the name. Yep, hi there. Oculus Rift, if you don't know what it is, it's actually a virtual reality gear, which is not necessarily like Google Glass, because it's quite different, as Manolo was mentioning and explaining earlier. Cool. And Kevin, if you have any questions about our topic, honestly, or location-based marketing in general, come on in. We have 2 open seats and stuff. Yep. Oh, thanks, Manolo. Yep. I was looking at the link. For more information, please join the open seat, or you could just put /Q and then a question. All right. We'll just spend a few more minutes, but depends if there are any other questions or we can end. Since this is the first episode, I kind of was thinking 30 minutes, half an hour to an hour, depending on how many people are coming in. As I've mentioned, I am testing this out, especially with this time zone, so that we can get, hopefully, when people start getting into Blab in the Southeast Asian, and the Pacific, Australia and New Zealand, will get more people to join in. So, Manolo, maybe one more example before we end. What other examples would you like to give us? So we've talked about beacons, we talked about facial recognition or analytics. We've got the virtual reality gear. Is there what is, location-based marketing, what is the landscape now? I mean, how does it look like in the next probably year or two? I guess that's a question.
Oh yeah, that's a good question. I think what we're seeing is, the behavior in the U.S. is, the more technology becomes part of everyone's lives, the higher the expectation is on the retail side. So people want the same convenience, efficiency, utility that they're getting with all their mobile apps. And, 9 times out of 10, that's the first experience that they have on a brand or a retailer, is through the mobile app or shopping and things like that. So what we're seeing is a lot of the expectation raising the level of the retail experience, which is driving a lot of our clients to say, I need to redo my shopping experience. I also need to make it so that it has the same experience no matter where I come from when I get into the store, that meets my expectation of being easy to use or getting information. The challenge right now is it's not there yet. A lot of the people there's been a lot of research that says, people aren't really, I think it's the Google, if you go to thinkwithgoogle.com, there's a lot of research that talks about how people crave more mobile information when they're in the store. Like, the first thing people do is they look up the price or they look up the product information, and a lot of that isn't there in a very helpful way. You imagine going to a store and you're going to buy, I just did this last week. I bought a new house. I had to buy a new refrigerator, and, a lot of different refrigerators out there, and you do a lot of research online, but then you get to the store because you still want to see, like, is it going to fit in my house? Is it going to fit through the door? So you have to be physically there and see the finishes. But there's no good way to pay that off. When you look and do research online, when you get to the store, there's still not a real good way to compare what you've looked at and bring it up and things like that. And so that's where the bridging of the experiences is going to happen. I think, beacons and tracking social media mentions in store, and also in-store GPS and using Wi-Fi, are all part of a bigger network that's going to be feeding data to the retailers that they're going to then use to help make the shopping experience more of a utility in a thoughtful way. Like, people are going to be like, okay, I thank you for thinking this through for me, and thank you for understanding what my needs are when I come in the shop. And those are the retailers that are going to win. If you remember way back when showrooming was happening, the retailers are fighting it. Well, they've learned quickly that they can't fight it. They should adopt these ways. And then also, because of how people's behaviors have quickly changed and will continue to change as our phones get more powerful, the demand for in-store experiences tied into the mobile phones or technology that's in there is going to become even higher. So we look at very similar spheres. So if you look at the in-store stuff, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, low energy Bluetooth, all of those things are like the first line of in close proximity marketing platforms. And then, you can go outside where you get into the geofencing and, GPS and things like that. I mean, even Waze is something that, you can see how it's been evolving. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the latest version that came out, but you can see they spent a lot of time changing the interface, and also the way ads are being popped out, and the fact that you can actually see where your friends are. Because if you think about how that evolves, it's all about that moment where you can say, hey, there's Jam, and she's actually I'm like 10 minutes away from each other. What if I was Starbucks and I could push you a coupon saying, hey, why don't you go meet Jam at the Starbucks because you're so close to each other? And that's kind of taking advantage of the moment in time where it knows it's my friend, and it also knows that we're in close proximity with each other. So I think that's the next evolution, is becoming even more thoughtful and contextually aware, and that those driving experiences that you don't even have to ask anymore. It should know. You'll expect it to know more about what's happening, and then offer up some opportunities for you to make a decision to shop for something.
Awesome. And before we end, unless there is a question from Kevin and Jocelyn as well, there, at least for New Zealand, my experience here, and I guess, no, not just New Zealand, but I guess, around the world, would say, there is still that concern about privacy. And you mentioned this at the beginning of, the show. I think that's one of the biggest challenges. There's that fine line of, yes, as a consumer, I'd love it if it's more personalized and everyone knows, the information that's relevant to my shopping experience, make it better, etc. But yet I am not open to giving the information that, the marketers or the retail, the companies need in order to make it better for us. So I guess there's that debate.
Yep. We call it, we call it the creepy or clever line, right? Because you can be clever and learn a little bit about my behavior and then offer me something that you think I would want. And you'll be like, hey, that's great. You're thoughtful about it. But then there's the creepy part. It was like, how did you get that information from me? And that's a little too personal, So I think recently I read about Vizio. Vizio, the TV manufacturer. They're smart. Do you guys have those out there? I think it's a US based.
Probably not. Yep.
Yeah, right. So smart TVs have been around for a while, and they also have cameras in them that face outward. So like you could do things like Skype and stuff like that. So Samsung and Sony, and they all have had them, Panasonic. But, they are very strict in saying, we're not collecting information from you unless you opt in. But Vizio, it was just found out that they have been doing things like listening in on people's conversations or turning on cameras and things like that. So they have been doing things that aren't so nice, but in order to learn more about people's shopping behavior. So I think that is where, when you break that trust, it's very hard for you to get back, right? And I think manipulation, I'm not saying marketing is manipulation, but I guess marketing is learning about where I can talk to you at your most, at the point where you're open to the suggestion. I can say, hey, you know what? You really need this thing, but it's based on a behavior that I know about you, right? So that's all what marketing is. So when it comes to privacy, I think most people would be willing to give information that's personal to a certain extent if you gave them a very personalized experience. Because once you get that experience where you're like, wow, I didn't even have to think. It just gave me an opportunity to buy because I'm watching a game. You're watching football and it knows who your favorite player is, and then you suddenly get an opportunity to buy the jersey because the guy just made a score. That, to me, is kind of the opportunity where privacy, you still have to let it know who your favorite team is and what you're watching, but that's not so bad because you have something great out of it, right? So I think that's where that fine line is.
Exactly. And Kevin, which is Triple P Insider, says in rural Scotland, the main problem is a lack of mobile data. Okay. Infrastructure to mobile phone signal in many areas. I'm assuming, and of course, I'm just clicking on his profile again. I'm assuming you're from Scotland? Yes, obviously. It says host of passing place around Scotland. Right. So I guess with the lack of mobile, the infrastructure, it might be, years still, or it depends whether the technology would reach it. I mean, it's not even something that we're thinking about. I mean, even those countries like the US, for example, with a lot of infrastructures in place, etc., it's still, again, as you mentioned earlier, it's about behavior, it's about the creepiness and everything else. It's beyond the technology that's out there. So yeah. Awesome. So I am ending the show, and this is actually a good experience. Thank you so much, Manolo. Seriously, Manolo is very. he's like one of the most respected people Oh, thanks for the props, Kevin. And if you do know, those are the props and stuff. Manolo, by the way, as I've said, one of the most respected people in the industry. That's why I was like, I hope he says yes. And you did. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I love to help.
All right. And thank you also, Kevin, and Karen, of course, and obviously Jocelyn for dropping by. And please, I will keep on doing this every week until it reaches a point wherein hopefully we have more Kiwis, more Aussies, or even Filipinos. Do you call them Singaporeans? Sorry.
I don't know.
Well, you've got friends there. You should know.
Yeah, that's true. I just call them friends from Singapore.
Friends from Singapore, okay, to join us. Anything else that you think you'd want for people to take away, those who are watching the replay as well? Anything else before we end?
No, if you have any more questions, you can find me on Twitter or LinkedIn. I can answer any questions you have. So.
Awesome. Okay, I will now stop the recording soon, but thank you very much for those who joined in. And this is every Thursday, 8 p.m. New Zealand time, the Social Jam show. Thanks for joining us, and thank you again, Manolo.